I took Dan Brown's Thriller Masterclass, and this is in this video we're gonna go through what I think about it and if I think it's worth watching. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the content in the masterclass. I have a year-long subscription on Masterclass, so I'm trying to watch as many videos as possible, at least like one short video a day. We'll see if I'll be able to keep that up. But if you want me to do more videos like this, let me know in the comments. So Dan Brown's Masterclass is a 4-part class that teaches you how to write thrillers. I personally don't write thrillers, but creating suspense is something that I know I need to work on, I need to get better at. It's actually one of the feedbacks I got from an editor, that I needed to like hook the reader and create more suspense in that manuscript, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to take this masterclass. I also think that Dan Brown is a great thriller writer and thought, why not learn from him? So the course has 19 parts that varies between a few minutes long to over 20 minutes long. So I think it's a great variety of length in movies. They're all basically bite-sized, so you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. And the 4 parts and the different chapters that he goes through are, so the first one is the anatomy of a thriller. In that chapter he goes through, there's an introduction to the whole masterclass, then he goes through the anatomy of a thriller, finding an idea and choosing a location. And for Dan Brown, location is something that is really, really important when it comes to writing his thrillers. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on in the video. Part number 2 is creating heroes and villains. In that part, he talks a lot about creating characters. He talks about creating villains and heroes. He talks about universal character tools. There's also a case study from one of his books. Then he goes through research and building a story from the ground up. Part 3 is how to create suspense, and here we go through, how to create suspense, how you can use point of view, and how you write chapters and scenes to create more suspense. And these are actually some really good tools, especially for me that know I need to work on this. Some really hands-on tips on how to create more suspense. Like how, if I end a chapter in this way, it will compel the reader to just read one more chapter, or if I use my scenes in that way, it will also create suspense in a way. So that is actually really hands-on great tips. The 4th part is exposition and dialogue, and here of course he talks about exposition and dialogue, but he also talks a lot about editing and rewriting. And then he goes into like these little bit grander themes, like the life of a writer, creating your own process and stuff like that. And yeah, it was really, overall I found this masterclass really great. Dan Brown is really, really, really humble, both about what it takes to write a great novel, but also that we're all different and that you need to put in a lot of work for a novel to work, I guess. I also love how he, in a structured way, talks about how to create 3-dimensional characters, and the fact that both villains and heroes need to be, they can't be just all good or all bad. They have to have a little bit of both. And now, spoiler alert, so if you haven't read Inferno, skip this part for a few seconds. But the villain in Inferno, Dr. Sobridge, is actually a villain that some readers may sympathize with, because the thing that he tries to solve is actually overpopulation. And overpopulation is something that is a problem. That is why we, when we talk about the climate and stuff like that, we know it's a problem, but we don't know how to handle it, I guess. So that makes him a very interesting villain, because of course he's also like crazy and stuff like that, but you don't want him to, as a reader, you don't want him to win, but you also you know, yeah, there's conflict there, both within me as a reader, but also in him, of course. And even if you don't like Dan Brown's style of writing, or if you don't like his books, I would say that you can learn a lot from watching his masterclass. He's super humble. He's super hands-on with everything, that all the tips that he gives you. And yeah, as you can tell, I really like this masterclass, so yay. And I'm going to tell you guys a bit of like the things that I wrote down when I watched it. So here are some of the nuggets I took with me, but remember that this does not mean that you should not watch the entire class yourself. I think if you want to learn from it, then watch it yourself. But here are a few nuggets that I took with me. So the first thing that I really, really liked is something that a lot of us probably heard from writing school or stuff like that, but that is the 3 C's. So it's the contract, the clock, the crucible. What is this, you wonder? Let me tell you. So the contract that you make with the reader is the way you hook the reader and the promises you make. An example can be, will the lawyer escape the corrupt law firm, or will the couple end up together? Depending on your genre and depending on the hook that you write in the beginning of the story, this is a promise that you have to keep. And this is something like, especially if you write suspense novels, but I think it goes through all genres. If you leave questions for the readers, you need to answer them. Like, some questions can be answered along the way, but some questions can be answered at the end. And this is how you get the reader to keep reading. But remember the contract with the reader. You still have to answer them. This is something that I've seen a lot of beginner writers make a mistake that they make. They make a bunch of promises and then they don't answer all of them, or they don't live up to them, and which means that the story will fall flat, especially at the end. The reader will stand there and be like, but why? This did not live up to my expectations. And so remember to like keep track of all the different threads that you create, ripples with the questions, because it's super important that you answer them. You live up to the contract that you have with the reader. So the clock is something that creates pressure and makes the story exciting. Laying a timer on top of a thriller is what makes it satisfying as a thriller. It creates this, you always know that, oh my god, I only have 2 days until XYZ happens. And the crucible is actually not letting your main character run away. That means that your character have to face the problem head on, and in this way you both create an interesting story, but you can also, like when your protagonist has to face whatever it is they are facing, you can make them face it in an interesting way, in a new way, an exciting way. That is a really great advice from Dan Brown. And facing the crucible is also what makes your protagonist heroic at the end of the day. So how does Dan Brown find an idea for a book? Well, he actually starts with location. I don't, so this was new to me, but I think it's an interesting approach to finding ideas. And he talks about when he looks at a location, maybe he'll start researching it or stuff like that, but then he'll look at it and say, what's the conflict here? So because there's always some kind of tension. I mean, especially if you look at art or religion or historical places, there's always something there that you can make something of. He also says that he identifies the sole dramatic question, and if you've read story structure, this is the concept of the story. And number 3, when it comes to finding an idea, is to try and pick a morally grey question, because those are much more interesting than just black or white. He also says that he tries to think like a philosopher and write like a writer, execute like a writer. And I found that one very interesting as well, because then you try not to put your own thoughts or values into things. You try to be objective and philosophize and think about it. I don't know. And how do you choose the right idea? If you're like me, I have a million ideas all the time. So how do I know which one to write? And here he said that you can write down the backside. What would be the backside of the book? Write it down, and then choose the idea that seems most interesting to you, that excites you the most. And I love this advice. It's brilliant, especially if you have a lot of ideas. And a few more advice that he has was to introduce your villain with a bang, to treat location as a character, and to give your hero a lot of flaws. Another advice that I really liked and that resonates a lot with me is to write every day and to set the table for breakfast for tomorrow. And by that he meant that he will start the next sentence, or start the first sentence of the next chapter before he leaves the computer, so that the next day when he sits down and he just reads that sentence, he knows where he's at and he can just launch into it and start writing straight away. He also talked about like how you can create a writing environment without distractions, and this is also something I'm very passionate about, because I feel like my phone and all the notifications and stuff like that, they will draw me out of focus. So sitting down somewhere where you can just block out the rest of the world and just focus on your writing, that is the best way for me, at least, to focus, and for Dan Brown as well, so kudos. And when he talked about his life as a writer, he also mentioned that the first few books that he wrote, they barely sold at all. They sold enough so that he got a contract for another book, but it was not until he released the Da Vinci Code that all of his books started selling. Before that, he was unknown. He would show up at signings with no one showing up to buy his books. So this is also something for all of us to remember, that you never know which of your book is going to be the huge success. So just keep writing, keep improving, and keep following your passion. Don't try to become someone else or try to write in a different genre just because it seems more profitable. But follow your passion, and one day you'll probably break through too. So yeah, that's it for today's episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, give it a thumbs up or leave a comment, and follow me for more content like this. I post writing videos and podcast videos every month. I'm not sure how often I'm going to do it, so but I definitely recommend watching this class. It doesn't matter if you write thrillers or if you write in a different genre. It was really, really good. I know that Masterclass is quite expensive. So if you're going to buy Masterclass subscription, make sure there are other things you want to watch too. But I have a year-long subscription, so if you want me to post more videos like this, let me know. And yeah.